Hello and welcome to this introduction to the photography studio and lighting techniques. My name is John Griffiths and I'm a member of the technical services team. My job here at UWE is to support learners develop their software design skills in the Adobe suite, as well as provide support and training for the photography resource. Here you can see the entire team. Feel free to call into our office located in 2R26 or contact me via email for assistance. This video shall first outline the basic operation of the studio equipment and then follow with some advice specifically directed towards architectural model photography. Unlike a guide for portrait photography or even product photography, architectural model photography is different in that the lighting setups used are typically very basic or, alternatively, very bespoke and dictated by the model's size, material and design concept. Architecture students typically use the studio for two purposes: to produce high-quality images of their completed models. The outputs are then used for digital assessment purposes or for portfolio material. Or alternatively, the studio is used to produce light studies which mimic the sun's position as a means to assess the real-world behavior of light and shade on particular materials. These can often be conducted in addition to creating a digitally rendered version of the model. The first thing to be aware of is that the studio remains locked when not in use and must first be booked out like any other piece of equipment listed on the Connect 2 booking system. Once you have logged in, you will find the studio space under Project Room Equipment. The demand on this resource fluctuates significantly throughout the year, so I would recommend booking access several days in advance to avoid disappointment. As for duration, I'd recommend booking a single-hour slot for a basic shoot, but additional hours if you intend to reposition the model and lights multiple times. As you will need to collect and return the key to the project room, the room access is normally limited to the opening hours of the project room desk and is displayed on the front page. There are two types of photographic lights available in the studio: spot LED lights and diffused fluorescent lights. Let's take a look at the spotlights first. The LED spots create a strong directional light on the subject with hard shadow definition. These are most commonly used to emulate the sun and usually function as the main light. The drawback of exclusively using these lights is that you get a very limited shadow detail and many subjects will reflect some of that light back to the camera, creating hotspots. The power switch for these lights is located at the bottom of the transformer. On the top side of the transformer, a dial can be found which controls the power output of the light. Rotating the large yellow bezel of the light allows you to adjust the area of the light spill. This should be used to prevent excess light falling onto your background. In addition, the barn doors on the unit can be adjusted to further modify the light so that it only falls on your subject or on a specific part of your subject. For specialist tasks where only a very limited area requires illumination, a masking adapter can be attached to the unit. This will provide a very high level of control over a very small area, such as for model interiors or macro photography. This item can be supplied on request from technical services. One of the two LED spotlights has been permanently affixed to a mobile boom arm. On the back of this arm is a 15 kg counterbalance weight which allows the smooth adjustment of the arm's position. This can be released by slackening off the center lever as shown here. The slightly larger lock lever below on the base of the stand can be used to adjust the height of the arm. Just please be aware that you will need to support around 20 kilograms of weight to raise or lower it. If you have any concerns about working with this weight, then do not hesitate to ask a technician or other staff member for assistance. The second LED is attached to a standard flash stand which can be adjusted for height. In the event that the stand cannot accommodate your required positioning, it can be removed as required and reattached like so. The second type of studio lights produce a softer, diffuse light with a far wider spread. These lights are most commonly used in combination with the spotlights to fill the harsh shadows created by the main light's beam. Adding this light reduces the contrast between lights and darks and usually results in a more realistic imitation of natural conditions. These lights can be used instead of spotlights to mimic the sun, but modifying the light becomes difficult. In the case of the round fluorescent lights, 5 independent bulbs can be found underneath the diffusion material. On the rear of the unit, each bulb can be turned on or off, allowing you to alter the brightness. The green rocker switch controls the main power. If the unit remains unpowered, it is most likely unplugged or turned off at the wall socket. The other diffuse lighting heads that we have are the Interfit LEDs. Their output is almost identical to the fluorescent lights, only that they have 2 layers of diffusion material inside rather than one, and that the light source is a single LED. On the back of the unit you will find the output dial. This gives a little bit more control and has 99 potential levels of brightness. The cable length of this unit is quite limited, so I would recommend using one of the room's extension leads. You will find several large paper backdrop rolls attached to the studio wall. The most commonly used papers are black and white. We do, however, have a dust blue and a chroma green, which is usually used for video FX. The purpose of these backdrops is to create a consistent single tone around your model. To change the backdrop paper, the user needs to manually move the current paper up and the required paper down using the plastic pull chains. This may also require some coaxing by hand. The white paper can be draped over the entire table in order to create an infinity effect. However, I should caution you that there's a high risk of damage in the paper and that the same effect can almost instantaneously be recreated in post-production. The black paper, on the other hand, should never be draped over the table, as you are instead trying to get the background material as far away from the stray light as possible. The studio tripod is used to secure your camera in place, preventing blur from affecting your images. As your available light is around 4 times less than outdoor conditions, this is a significant issue. Slackening off the lever below the arms will allow you to make both vertical and horizontal adjustments. The tripod has caster wheels, allowing you to move it around the room, but be aware that pulling it from height can cause it to tip over. You can counter this by directing the base around with your foot if it becomes an issue. The quick release plate can be removed by pulling the safety clip and the main release lever back at the same time. The plate should then spring free. The plate can then be screwed into any camera with a standard tripod mount. Once screwed in, ensure that the thicker side of the mount is facing towards the back of the camera. Align the plate to the mount's rear first and push down. It should make a confirming click when reconnected. You may also need to push the release arm to fully lock it in place. Finally, the pistol grip can be used to fine-tune your framing. If you prefer to use a smartphone camera, a phone clamp adapter can also be found in the studio. This will allow you to attach your smartphone to the tripod using the same method as we use to attach the camera. As well as the studio, several other photographic items can be booked using the Connect2 system. These include tripods, video equipment and cameras. If required, You can also book a camera to produce your images during your studio session. The available cameras are Nikon 3000 series digital SLRs. They come in a bag together with a battery charger and mini USB cable, which will allow you to move your images onto campus PCs. As you both capture and view things through the front lens, you will first need to remove the lens cap. The best place to leave it is probably inside the camera bag. Next, you need to unlock the lens from travel mode. To do this, hold the large button down and rotate the zoom barrel. You are now ready to go. Note that rotating this barrel now allows you to zoom in and out of your image. A collar switch which wraps around the large silver release button is used to turn the camera power on and off. On the back of the camera, midway down and on the right, is a button marked LV. This will activate live view. Some users find using this is more intuitive than looking through the camera's viewfinder, although you will lose the data previously displayed on the screen while it is running. On the top of the camera, there's a large mode selection wheel. Quite often you will find the mode is set to auto. This is not the best mode for studio work, as it automatically triggers the flash in low light. This will constantly trigger in the studio. Instead, selecting P for program will still allow the camera to work in fully automatic mode, but will not trigger the flash. Here's a quick rundown of the most important information displayed at the back of the camera. 1/60 refers to the duration the shutter needs in order to open up and make the correct exposure. Typically, 1/60 is the absolute lowest value you should consider hand holding the camera at. The middle value is the aperture. This will range between f3.5, which is wide open, to f32, which is the smallest aperture. The larger the aperture number is, the greater the depth of sharpness will be from the point in which you focus on. However, a smaller aperture will reduce your shutter speed. The final value, ISO, refers to the camera's light sensitivity. This generally ranges between 100 and several thousand. The higher the value, the more light sensitive the sensor is and the faster the shutter can release. However, the higher the value, the more the picture quality is degraded. To take a picture, place the focus in square displayed through the viewfinder or on the live preview image over an area that you wish to focus on. Then put a small, consistent amount of pressure on the shutter button. This will cause the camera to autofocus. The focus will then stay locked while you continue to keep that pressure on the shutter button. If the area you are focusing on has no contrast, you may sometimes need to refocus to get a focus lock. A focus lock noise will sound when you are successful. To take your picture, simply apply further pressure to the shutter button. The image you have just taken will then be briefly displayed on the rear screen. To view it again, press the play button on the rear top left. Finally, when your shoot is complete and you wish to transfer your image to PC, the mini USB out socket can be found under the rubberized door as shown here. Once finished, simply return the camera into travel mode and power off. Before photographing your model, I'd recommend first creating a plan of what you want to achieve. Is it a light study or a showcase of your design skills? Is your plan to highlight specific elements such as color, size, material or texture? What brief are you working to? What are your influences and how were they photographed? What positions were the completed buildings to be viewed from? Do you want a plan view or section view? How should your lighting appear? dramatic, subtle, soft, hard, or backlit. Some basic notes or sketches of the elements you want your photograph to display may help you work more effectively. Before you begin, ensure that the room light is turned off to prevent color contamination. The most common lighting setup uses a main light, which represents the sun, at a fixed position, and one or more fill lights positioned on the opposite side of the model to soften the shadows. The main light's power output is typically around double that of the fill light. Notice, however, in this example that in order to soften my shadows, I've moved the fill light significantly closer to the model. Because of this situation, the output of the main light has to be around 6 times greater than the fill light in order to get a good balance. Also note that the video camera exposure readjusts as I zoom out. This reveals that the model is in fact casting 2 sets of shadows, yet this issue simply doesn't have an impact when cropped in. A viable alternative would be to position the fill light right next to the main light, preventing any double shadowing. When conducting illumination studies based on the sun's projected position, the user needs to orientate the model's position in relation to it. A compass app can assist with this. Here's an example of a sun tracking app which will assist the user in accurately calculating where to place their main light based on the time and date. Just be aware that these apps typically need to be purchased. When producing images to showcase your work, a little more artistic license can be used. In this example, I've repositioned the main light to reflect off the backdrop, and I am using a very weak fill light in order to pick up minor foreground detail. Using the same light setup with a little more fill, I've introduced a simple piece of perspex sheeting to create a reflection effect. Perhaps one of the most useful light modifiers is the humble piece of mounting board. The dark side can be used to mask off unwanted light spill, while the white side can be used as an effective reflector to fill in shadowed areas. A Tamron 90mm macro lens can be provided on request by technical staff members. It can be very useful when focusing on miniature models or detailed elements. For best results, I would recommend experimenting with manually focusing this lens. Finally, we have a video endoscope, again available from Technical Services. This will allow you to get interior shots of your model which other cameras will not be able to reach. This is, however, at the detriment of image quality, with the maximum output being far lower than from other devices. Thank you all for watching this video, and I wish you the best of luck with your future studio endeavours.